Well, we have a great program today. Somebody who's well known to us through the college and actually through the communities. I was just talking to a fellow who was talking about David Kromm and his relationship to DeSoto and his history there with the school here. We've worked with him quite a bit. In fact, he's even hired away a couple of our folks as I stare down at Linda Bigelow real carefully. We allowed it because she retired, but we wouldn't normally do that. So today our speakers, David, I assume both you and Young Hee are going to speak, or David and Young Hee Kromm. They met while they were students of architecture at WashU. Now, I'll just say years later. I'm not going to say how many. How's that? And that was more for Young Hee than it was for you, David. David is the president. Young Hee is the principal designer at Kromm, Rikimaru, and Johansen. 85% of their work is in the field of education. Kromms believes schools are the backbone of the community, and schools' architecture should reinforce the cultural heritage of the community wherever possible. In the late 1990s, the Kromms received a grant to study the architecture of the heritage of the River Heritage region and the Mineral Area region. Mineral Area College, is that near here? Sponsored this program in partnership with the Missouri Humanities Council with support from the National Endowment for the Humanities and the state of Missouri. I'm going to let David talk about some of the objectives, but he says that this project is a revealing reminder of how our past has potential to inform thinking about a region's architectural future. David and Young Hee remain strong in their commitment to learning about the communities of their clients and reinforcing the cultural heritage of the community through architecture. So without further ado, will you help me welcome David and Young Hee Kromm.
Well, as Ray said, we did, I'm supposed to turn this on. Can you hear me okay back there? Very good. We've done a lot of work in southeast Missouri, and as we do now, and we've basically in the 1990s started taking pictures. We're noticing there's lots of beautiful buildings around. And we approached the Missouri Humanities Council, and they funded us. We gave a $5,000 grant. We did probably $50,000 worth of work. 10% return on investment. Basically put together a program to study the architectural heritage of the area. We honed it down to the mining towns and river towns just south of here. If you go south on 21, you get to Potosi and Caledonia and some very interesting places, Pilot Knob. And what happened? Look at that there. And, oh, she did that, very good. Boy, there's more technology here. And so we studied the architectural heritage of that area. And we studied how it came to be. And we shared info with the communities, as we're doing now. And we have this up on our website. We'll show how to get on the website in a little bit. And then assist in keeping this culture alive and vibrant. I think it's our hope that you should be able to land in any town in the region and know where you are just by looking at the buildings. So that's all what I said, you don't have to read all. And this is the area here. And here's the mineral area. So here's Highway 21 coming down here, and Caledonia and so forth. And the picture in front, that's taken right near Caledonia. And then these are the river towns. And then there were wood plank roads that went in between the two, so that was the economy of the region. And some examples of pictures that we've taken. The writing here was done by our partner, David Broman, who is an anthropologist at Washington University. And he did the research that said, well, not only what the buildings are, but how they came to be. And this is the courthouse in Potosi, beautiful building. And it's similar to Theodore Link's courthouse in Fredericktown. And Theodore Link is the same architect as the train station, Union Station in St. Louis. So you can see how there was an architectural influence. This, however, is a small church. It's 30 feet wide, about 50 feet long, smaller than a house. Absolutely beautifully, exquisitely detailed. And as we're going to talk about in a minute, it was a lot of the ornament on the buildings is improvised in Gothic. You don't see many wood Gothic buildings, but this one is a wood Gothic building. And this was not an architect, it was a judge. And he was very consistent that judges try to be inside and outside and so forth. Beautiful building in Ironton. Another building in Ironton, a courthouse. Most of the buildings that people really cared about, courthouse, churches, and some of the, maybe some of the prominent buildings, and occasionally a school. And this is the Iron County Courthouse, built right before the Civil War. You can see a little nick here where a bullet hit it in the Civil War. They used this, both sides used it at different times. And their way of ornament, I mean, very practical. We want to keep water from dribbling over the windows. And one way to do that is to raise the brick and then there's a sense of ornament. And beautiful building. Zell is like a German community just north of St. Genevieve. Beautiful church, handcrafted stonework. And again, a lot of the detail here, a lot of the ornament. It's not like on the East Coast, people had books and $1,000 a book usually. You'd have a whole library full. And you can look in the book and find the detail, and then you get a stonemason to just say, copy it. Not so here. We had to do some original thinking and do that. And he'll talk about that in detail. Altenburg, I think, is another very memorable experience for us. There's like a replica, or I think it's a real one preserved, of a log cabin. It's about this tall, like a little hut, like a pigsty or something. And they were living in those things, and they built this building. And it's handcrafted in stone. That's a compound curve. And built that church. There's a group of Lutheran immigrants who came up to St. Louis, bought some supplies, and came down here and settled. This later grew into the Missouri Synod. Every community has its own culture, very distinct, and I think the culture here is distinct from other areas. So we study the community, and they have things like an economy and a sense of government, but they also have a culture. And that culture goes everything from the religious background up to, over to architecture. And so architecture is one level that we're studying. And there's a focus on different communities. This may be a little hard to understand, but it's worth it. Focus on art. In other words, the building is a sense of art in itself. Wonderful, and tends to be rather expensive edifice that's just perfect in every detail and to be admired forever. Then there's the focus on the artist, the signature architect, draws the building. And we have a building by blankety blank architect. And then there is focus on the audience. We work together on this building, we focus on it, we think about it, and we see ourselves in that building. And this culture is the latter part. Examples of this is St. Peter's Cathedral in Rome is a building as art. A beautiful building, very expensive building. As I walked through that building, I could see the details in it. You could take almost any part of that building and you can infer the whole building from that detail. That's classicism. Every dimension is thought out and never try to build that kind of building here. It's expensive, people don't want to spend that money on that, and it's not us in essence. I think there's an important reason there. This is on the West Coast, could just as easily be on the East Coast, and signature architect Frank Gehry. And this is the Disney Opera House. And as I walk through that building, it's really a lot of fun. I mean, there's nothing straight. It's like, if you like caving, you like that building. And that's titanium, by the way, on the skin of it. And the one in Chicago, there's another one that looks a lot like this. And then there's Bilbao in Spain and so forth. Harvard, MIT, as a building by Frank Gehry. And so to like that building would be to really like Frank Gehry. And that's okay for me up to a point. Then the last one is Hagia Sophia. And I haven't been there, but it's a building that is meant to be reflective. It's meant to, you can see that building and think on your own and see your soul. And while the St. Louis Cathedral here, if you're familiar with that building, is similar in concept to it. It's not like every dimension is perfectly worked out. It's more like there's a feeling in the space, and it makes you want to pray. It's like good for a cathedral. And and I would say that most of the, and as he's going to explain, most of the architect here is in that latter category. So we focus on the audience, basically. And some of the things, our ancestors, the French coming up along the rivers, my mother's ancestors came down the Ohio. They were kicked out of Canada, brutally dispersed by the British. Went down the Ohio River. I don't know how they got the Ohio River, but they went down the Ohio River and then came up in Mississippi and settled in St. Genevieve. And they got out of here. They came here because it was the closest space, but outside the United States. Outside. And then when the Louisiana Purchase came, there was quite a migration from the upper South and all the way through really about a 1,000-mile swath, which today you might think of as the Bible Belt, very strong culture. And then there's the German immigrants that came in the 1850s and so forth. And so very strong. Here are examples of the French. This is the Menard House. The veranda, very responsive to the weather. And you'll see more of that in a minute. And then there's the Upper South. We feel that this is, in a Baptist church, for instance, the one here or near here in Festus, beautiful building, has the very steeple in the center, very symmetrical, classical in proportion, and inventive by necessity, maybe inventive in the way it's ornamented. That's really a nice building. And then the German immigrants is basically Romantic Classicism. And Romantic Classicism was basically Napoleon wanted to start a whole new architecture, modern architecture, and got rid of ornament altogether. And it didn't go over very well in France, but the Germans loved it. And they picked it up, and they took it over here when they came here. And so basically, Romantic Classicism it does have an ornamentation which developed and relates to nature and focuses on the audience.
So as I studied this with David about this Mississippi Valley area, trying to understand what did the Romantic Classicism did. And one of the things notice is that the forms and the organization is primarily based on this classical nature. And the next thing is that as we study the ornamentation, and it's really limited local materials, but oftentimes it's improvised. And it's improvised in a fashion that feelings and emotions really come about. And more so than the trying to be perfect proportion or golden sections or whatever have you, it's more of expressing their piety or their humor, their joy in the life. So I find the beauty really, it's teaching me a lot of things. And the other things I learned a lot about studying this architecture was that it's very harmonious to the nature. It really works with the hair gently, and it's just really, it's not steep. It's you go up a little bit, and then there is a platform, and then go up. But it's not completely wiping out or anything like that. It works with it very carefully. So going back to the how these classes worked, and we started looking at the more in details how these proportions of the pediment work or windows are placed. All this thing is organization was very symmetrical. So we found that we studied this in one of the history books, which was designed by very prominent architect in Berlin in early 19th century. And then we looked at this Missouri Botanical Garden and the similarity and that the architect tried to do is just so, it's just striking. And I started looking at where I should really learn from this point, rather than trying to invent the whole thing from ground. So then we keep going on and looking at this ornamentation and the composition of where the windows are and where things are placed. It's around the doors or just sparse, but not everywhere like you might find in the California Mission style or some place like other end of the America. It's a more very specific, very important place. People carefully ornamented, but it's just enough that I can relate to, oh, that's an important building. So it's same thing with this, and the kinds of rustication, all those things, just enough so that people will respect the importance of the building, but not so wasteful that it's or too what should I say? Too wasteful of resources.
Yes.
So from those lessons, when we design a building, this is one of our projects, and you could see, kind of continuation of this area. It's not something we try to invent, trying to import from East Coast or West Coast, but it's something kind of grow out of what we came. Now going to ornamentation, this is a really fun part for me because I could read into what people might have thought and might have felt, and like a very careful craftsmanship of that little edge, carefully cutting out. I'm sure back then it was all by patience, little by little, but so precise. You just couldn't believe the details went into. And again, those archways, the stones laid out, didn't have enough tools or something to make the precise, but the careful arrangement along the doorway was really striking.
You can feel somebody working on it.
Yes. And this is another interesting, the humor of it. Most times when you have gargoyles, things like that, it's under the eave. But in here, somehow it went over the eave. And, it's against the gravity. So as an architect, I keep thinking, how do I detail that? But I guess somebody there back when it was built, it was built and it's still there. So some genius did it, and I don't know how they did it. So I don't think I can duplicate it. And some of these things is again, just how carefully, sparsely resources were used, just where it should be. Nothing more, nothing less, just enough. This is, when I see this one, I feel the humble piety. It's a small church, and they probably didn't have much resources. And yet you can see the cross in that little area there. I mean, it's subtle, but somebody carefully did, instead of just putting the brackets and then support that entrance canopy, it was carefully designed and modest means. And it's something, as an architect, I feel like I should respect, especially when we are designing all these facilities with tax money. I want to remember this. Somebody was able to bring beauty out of nothing. This is another example of, trying to fight with this pouring rain, so the rain doesn't go into the window, yet they made something out of it. It's not just gutter. It's not just flashing detail. It speaks something beyond just functionalities. Another example of the church David mentioned earlier, roof could have been just plain, but somebody carefully painted it. And to this day, that tradition is there. And I think it's just remarkable how people were able to design with what they had.
And they keep it up.
Yes. And the other thing is that's the student table, and it's a small parish school building, and there's an inkwell. Everything else was just plain, but that inkwell was very important to these people, and each desk had these inkwells right there. And it could have been just any bowl, but it should be something more to communicate to the student how important what they are doing, they are learning. So again, it's small details, but it's ornamented to communicate the feelings. I could sense the artist and the user communicating the feelings of importance. This one is very unique in a way that I find a lot of humor. I think somebody who designed that must have a great fun with the materials, what materials could do. It's not just any shingles nailed on. It's humorously done.
There's a similar one in front that same one.
This is carved out of wood, that George's building, but it is it's mimicking the stone, but it's carefully carved out of wood to. So I find this very intriguing that it's a wood but trying to be a stone, and the stone meaning the permanence and all those implications one carries from the imagery of a stone is being related to me by looking at it. And some of our buildings around here is again reflection of this improvised, careful craftsmanship. And in this area, I'm fortunate to find a lot of the brick mason caring what they do. So I like to kind of carry on that tradition, and you can see, they carefully work out from our design, and I just can't believe in bad weather, good weather, they try to do this.
I couldn't talk to her for about 2 weeks when she was designing.
So, and the other thing is how, as I mentioned earlier, how we can relate to nature, and all these things, how people work.
Climbing the hill.
And then in our design, we were trying to do the same thing. I think Rick and several of you remember when we were struggling, scratching our so, I think this building only could exist in the Jefferson County. It has to be rocky here. And I take
Rocky.
so trying to work with the nature all together rather than fight with it, go with the things. So here I am in Mississippi Valley. I feel like after 40-some years here, maybe I finally feel I'm at home. I want to do something I can contribute more to this culture. So I started soul searching. This is beyond our Humanities Council, so I guess. So some of you already know I grew up until I came to WashU. I grew up in Korea. And what is stuck to my head is that the Korean ceramics, and the first one on the top is the quote is from one of the art books talking about comparing between the Chinese, Korean, and Japanese ceramics, and these three pictures are Korean ceramics opposed to, even though they look, all the Far Eastern artifacts seem similar, but one of the interesting thing is, let me see how I can work. Maybe I borrow you.
Why don't we just switch?
Yes, no, if I can borrow this, maybe I can use better. That's good. You see, this is left unfinished. And if you look at this glazing on the top is almost intentionally imperfect. So here's incomplete, and then here's imperfect. And again, there's incompleteness here. So, I was just thinking about this, and then I'm thinking about, okay, in here it's audience-based, audience-focused, and how do I introduce this another cultural aspect to this. And then this is another quote coming from,
Can you all read those from back there?
is
I'll read it. The imperfect Korean bowl waits for me, even when I'm not at home, whereas the Chinese bowl waits for no one. And as you think about that bowl, it becomes your bowl. And
so.
poetic relationship in space, audience focused.
So that's a kind of where I'm looking forward to see more. In other words, in the spaces we have worked, for example, this grill work in the ceiling, this is an early childhood center for Brentwood School District. And I intentionally left blank. And then teachers discover what to do with this. So this space gets completed only when there is a teachers and the students. It's not completed when I'm done with the design. And the next one is another example is when it's empty, the space feels empty. But when there's the people going around, it just really comes alive.
And
So,
that space is hardly ever empty.
so I think one of the things, is always kind of have people, teachers or students complete the space rather than when I'm trying to over-design or over-control or whatever have you. So that kind of becomes very important to me as I get more into this. And if I get really good at it, I may be able to do this. This Paley Park is in Manhattan. And it's a kind of insignificant if you are walking by that 53rd Street or whatever the street, I forgot, is. But in the late afternoon and the people start gathering and then they will go sit down, and then what happens is that this waterfall which comes through the pebbles make just enough noise that when you are sitting in this chair, you don't hear outside the street noise. And so not only this architect understood what the sunlight did in the pebbles on this waterfall, but also he was understanding the noise level. And I don't think I'm that there yet, but maybe I could understand acoustics as well. So that's kind of where we are.
That's our webpage. If you get on ours webpage, you can see more of this. KRJ is the initials of our firm, and ARCH is short for architect. When you get on here, you see this, you just click on this, and you're into our exhibit. That's the story.